Now, our tree guy that has been in this series, I keep calling him a guy, but I don't know.
Tree Lord.
Tree Lord. Well, yeah, okay, good point. Yeah. So, but you've modified the Tree Lord from Games Workshop. The Tree Lord that comes in the box does not look exactly like this. This one has decided to make a nice collection of skulls, human and otherwise, honestly. Like, because that one's really big. That's not a human skull. That's like a giant, I guess, I'm assuming.
No son of mine.
Exactly, right. And so you want to show, like, what you can do to make the bones look, I think, more interesting than just like, I've made a bone color.
If we look closely at decayed bones, sometimes they take on this kind of speckled look. And I had a lot of fun building this. Just as a side note, I took a lot of inspiration from the Blanchitsu movement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
look it up.
I'm going to tell you right now, Blanchitsu, coming from John Blanche, the namesake.
Famous artist for Games Workshop.
It is the punk rock of miniature painting.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
absolutely.
why we should all embrace it. Stay punk.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're working with a lot of textures on this figure, and it's about the creativity of the build as well. But yeah, we're stippling. We're just dotting these colors together and then kind of glazing over those tones, of course, because as something falls into the shadows, it's going to lose some detail. And then as it ascends into the light, we get to see more.
It's kind of like wet blending, except not smooth.
We are.
It's
It
like
is a wet
pointillism,
blend.
but you're using it as you build up layers and they're wet, and there's a lot of poking.
Yeah,
there's a lot of poking.
Wet blend.
Yeah.
You watch and see. You can call it whatever you want.
Yeah, absolutely. But it really makes a nice kind of interesting texture and also interesting, nice fade blend that's not your standard wet blend.
You thought it was interesting?
I thought it was interesting.
Thank you. Skulls. You are given but one. If you happen to have an extra, I think I can tell you how to paint it. So, colors in play. We've got some Vallejo buff, white, black, as well as some Death Rolled Forest from Citadel. Those would be the four main ingredients, and what we're going to be doing today is stippling. I had someone ask me what stippling is, and I realized that some of these terms may be new to some people. So if you have already heard what stippling is, skip ahead 3.5 seconds. If you don't know what stippling is, it is this. I'm just tapping the brush down, creating this pointy little texture, just like so. And I find that this textured result applies well to painting bones. So we're going to focus in on the main skull here of all these many skulls. We'll throw down that ivory. I'll just use the flat of the brush to just kind of plainly lay it down. I can leave the crevices alone, the recesses like the temples. This is just kind of setting a backdrop to be modified later. And I might have to come back for a second pass, throwing a light color over a deep base coat. Not always what the doctor ordered. But we'll take some of that Death Rolled Forest. Start stippling it in while both colors are still wet. Kind of gummy. That's good. The paint is not diluted because I want it to hold its place. If I stipple it too much, then I'm just mixing paints together. Try it for yourself, though. Experiment, achieve, overcome, learn to fail daily, etc. You're never going to get any better if you don't try something new. Now we can move down into the black direction. Be very careful. Black can quickly overtake an area that you're working on. But what you can also do, see, I'll touch down a little bit of black, kind of lay it in my general chosen area, swipe the brush off on my paper towel, turn it into a bit of a blending nub, and just stipple it back together like so. Now, again, it's up to you to choose just how intense the light situation is on this model. For me, maximum intensity. So go to the forehead with that death rolled forest, lower portions of the cheeks. Basically, I want to cast a nice shadow on the brow. And finally I'll grab my Vallejo white, kind of decide on my brightest area, pick out those brows, still just stippling the entire time. I'll lick the brush or wipe it off on the paper towel, turn it back into a blending nub, and just sort of massage the boundary. Get things to blend. Go back to the ivory, pick out all of his many 4 teeth. Decent. We'll have to do that in a few passes. I have to let this dry. I've said it before, but acrylics desaturate as they dry. So it's going to lose a little bit of its luster, and I have a feeling that that deeper black base coat is going to show back through. So we'll just do a little studio fade and come back in for the next pass of this. All right, do it again. That's a common motto, whether you're finishing an army or trying to create some kind of higher level paint job. Many thin layers, the accumulation of these colors to yield their truest values, etc. You can see on the skull here, now that everything has dried out, calmed down a bit, I have some darker areas showing through. Maybe that's what I'm after. If I'm happy, then I'm happy and it's fine. But for the sake of example, we'll go through and add another layer. Repeating the process again. And I'll use even smaller amounts than before. Just putting a little bit of paint on the tip of my brush. And just creating that same gradient once again. Bit of ivory. Make sure to leave some spaces between your stipplings. I want this to look like a very knobby, battered skull. These forest spirits assembled this kind of cruel mockery of a living humanoid form, whatever creatures are invading their forest sanctuary. So naturally turning the corpses of your enemies against them, well, that's psychological warfare, brother. All right, I'll just kind of light that ivory back up, putting stippling a wet amount on before I bring up the white progression. I can swipe my brush off, turn it into a blending nub, give it a little taparoo. Make sure to pick out the upper part of the nose, the upper highlights, these cheekbones, any area that's protruding. You want to make sure you put a little point of light on it. So just like that. Now to kind of refine things, I'll go back to doing a little bit of layering. I'll throw some, combine some black with the death rolled forest. And I'll start bringing those gradual thin layers in, using the side of the brush so I can affect as much as the area at one time as possible. Kind of carve some of the randomness back into the skull shape, and of course leave a necessary amount of randomness showing, because this is all about creating textures. Sweep a very, very thin amount down on the front of his brow, and there you have it. Just like so, I'll go back. Maybe I wanted to add like an ink wash to this, or another layer of just tiny dots and slashes in the highlights. But yeah, that's stippling in a nutshell. Thanks to Uncle Adam and everyone here at the crew of Tabletop Minions, who is definitely not fanning me. It's getting a little warm under all these lights, so we're going to cut her out. If you want to catch up with me on social medias, you can find me on Instagram, see some work in progress pictures, as well as some other weirdness. It's always going to be weird. On Facebook for any class teachings and bookings, and on Twitch for all your Twitch streaming. So I'll catch you on the flip side.